Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all back to the Boombox Guru channel, and I'm your host LB. So today, man, we got an album review that I want to talk about, and we're going to be talking about the brand new album from Snoop Dogg called Missionary that came out. I believe it was December 12th or 13th of this month. It's the brand new Snoop Dogg album called Missionary, and what's very special about this album is that this is actually the first Snoop Dogg album in 31 years that that is fully produced by Dr. Dre. So the last time that Dr. Dre actually produced the Snoop Dogg album in full was Doggystyle. And throughout the years, Dre and Snoop, when they started back working together around 90, probably around 99, they continued to put out a lot of classic songs together. Still DRE, The Next Episode, Lay Low, Imagine That. Just a lot of great songs. There's actually an article, I think, on Hip Hop DX that has a list of all the classic songs that Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg have done together, from Deep Cover all the way until whatever their last really dope collaboration was. So for fans like me who grew up on Snoop and Dr. Dre, for years we've been wanting to have another Snoop album that Dre fully got behind and produced. And we finally got it over 30 years later. So, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to go ahead and just give my raw and honest thoughts and opinions about this record. When they first announced this, I think back in 2022, I got excited. I was like, finally, we're getting a Dr. Dre produced Snoop Dogg album, something that we've been waiting on for years. Although, I try not to get too excited because we know Dr. Dre's track record. He tends to not put out a lot of great music. He has a vault, kind of like Prince. He has vaults of music, great music that never got released. Dr. Dre is the same way. He has a lot of great material that never sees the light of day, either because he doesn't feel that it's up to par, or he loses interest and moves on to something else, whatever the case. So, to me, it was a little bit skeptical whether this album was going to come out. So that's one positive I can say, that they actually released this album, because Dre, like I said, man, Dre don't have the best track record when it comes to releasing material. But with Snoop Dogg, with this being a part of Snoop, there was probably no question that this album was going to come out. So, like I said, man, I didn't want to beat around the bush. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I really think that this album was just okay. I don't think that it was really great, and I don't think that it really lived up to the expectations that I had. And let me clarify something. I was not somebody that was expecting to get another Doggystyle or anything of that nature. I was just expecting to get something that I felt was gonna be worth all the anticipation, because we've been waiting for years for Dr. Dre and Snoop to get back in the studio and to do a whole album together. And I just feel that Missionary really didn't live up to that hype. It honestly didn't. So when I first got worried was when the first single came out, called Gorgeous, featuring Janae Yoko. I think that's how you pronounce her name. But anyway, when that single Gorgeous came out, I listened to it and I was like, okay, this song sounds good, but something was missing. Something was missing in that song. It just didn't have that spark that you usually get from a Dre and Snoop track. I mean, Snoop's performance on there sounded great, but the song overall, it didn't make me anticipate the album anymore. It didn't make me go crazy like, oh man, I just can't wait to get this album. It was like, okay, this is all right. Then there was another song called Out the Blue that I heard. That, okay, this sounded a little better. I thought that song sounded a little better when I heard it. Still didn't make me go crazy and want to really just make me more eager to get my hands on this album. It still didn't do it. The only song on the album that really came close to me being like, oh man, this album about to bang, or whatever, or the type of song that made me go, oh, like, okay, this is a bop. This song right here is jamming. The only song that did that was the track called Thank You that I heard on the Drink Champs episode. Excuse me, let me move my mic this way. That's better. Yeah, the only song that I heard that really made me go like that was the Thank You song that I heard on the Drink Champs episode. And unfortunately, that song is not even on the physical version. because they didn't put the song out in time to make the physical copies. So you can only listen to it on the digital versions, on streaming and so forth. So that's a bit of a bummer right there. But overall, man, to me this is a pop rap album. That's exactly what this is, man. When I saw the track listing and it had Jelly Roll and Tom Petty on the song called what's that song called again? Last Dance with Mary Jane, and a song with Sting on Another Part of Me. Listen, I'm not gonna hate on somebody for doing a song with Sting. I mean, Sting is one of the most iconic music artists in the world. But when I seen that track listing, I was like, what is this, man? Who? Tom Petty, Jelly Roll, Sting? Like, wait a minute, I was like, wait a minute, what kind of album is this? This ain't, like I said, I wasn't expecting this to be another Doggystyle, but I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? And when the album finally came out and I listened to it, I was like, okay, there's some songs here and there that are good, but overall, this album just ain't hitting. Like, those songs were clearly, it almost sounded like Snoop and Dre were trying to chase commercial success. That's what it sounds like. It almost, like the songs with Tom Petty and Jelly Roll and the song with Sting, it really sounds like an attempt to chase commercial success. Like they're trying to get a Grammy nomination or something. That's the way it sounds. It sounds like they're trying to get a performance at the Grammys or something like that. That's the way that those two songs sounded to me. And maybe that was the intention. But when I saw that and when I heard the songs finally, I was like, oh man, okay. Cause the song with Jelly Roll and Tom Petty doesn't sound like a Snoop Dogg song. It sounds like Jelly Roll featuring Snoop Dogg and Tom Petty. You know, and I don't know, the Sting song, it sounds like something that should have been in like a movie, or I don't know. Those two songs to me just didn't fit because to me they just don't sound very hip hop in particular, man. And you know that's another thing too. I feel like this album is more pop rap, and it doesn't really have a West Coast kind of hip hop sound to it. It just sounds like pop rap in my opinion. It just overall, man, the album just did not live up to the hype. And I just want to keep clarifying that I was not expecting another Doggystyle. And the reason why I keep repeating that is because there's so many people out here who are getting mad when people like me and others speak up and say, okay, we're not feeling this album. We don't like it that good. They keep pointing the finger at us, talking about you guys are just stuck in 1993, or you're just programmed to think that Doggystyle is this and that. Well, let's be real. Doggystyle is one of Snoop Dogg's greatest albums. Some people might even say that it's his greatest work. Okay, Doggystyle was the last album that Dr. Dre fully produced for Snoop. So in a lot of ways, you can't help but kind of compare this album to Doggystyle. You can't help but kind of have some type of reference to Doggystyle when it comes to this, because that was the last album. That was the last Snoop Dogg album that Dr. Dre fully produced. It was Doggystyle, and Doggystyle is one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. It's an iconic album. So, of course, Doggystyle was kind of going to be in the back of our minds, but I'm honestly telling you, I wasn't expecting another Doggystyle, but I was expecting something that was a lot better than this. Like, I don't really see myself playing this album a whole lot. This album's not gonna have a lot of replay value for me, especially since the one song on the album that I thought was really dope, called Thank You, isn't even on the physical version. I might jam out to that song like if I'm at work listening to Spotify, but nothing else on here really on here grabbed me all that much. I mean, there was a few other songs on here that I dug. I liked the song Shangri-La. I liked it Out the Blue. Hard Knockin' was pretty cool. But that was about it. I mean, 50 Cent and Eminem was featured on here, which was pretty cool. But, I mean, where's the Dog Pound? Where's the East Siders? I mean, Jane Hancock and October London aren't even on this album, I don't think. Are they? Let me hold on. Let me double check and make sure I'm not lying. Yeah, Jane Hancock and October London aren't even on this album, and those are Snoop Dogg's artists. Those they're the newest artists signed to Death Row, and they're not even on this album. Method Man made a. I forgot about the song with Method Man, Skyscrapers. That was pretty dope. Method Man's verse I thought was killer. I thought he did a great job on his verse, man. He didn't even curse on his verse, which was sick. Let's see. Another positive that I can say about this album is that Snoop Dogg's performance was really good. His performance really carried this record because I haven't heard Snoop sound like this in a while. He sound very energized, and he sounded like he was really into the album. Although I was a bit disappointed to see that he only had writing credits on 3 songs on the record, but I digress. I thought his performance was what really carried this album because I just don't think production-wise I don't think his production was up to par on this album. Honestly, I just think it was a bit weak. You know what I'm saying? And I don't, I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything because I'm a huge Dr. Dre fan, but I just think his production was a bit weak. Honestly, this album sounds more like an extension of Dre's last album, Compton, that came out back in 2015. I kind of feel like that's where the production is kind of stuck in. It's kind of stuck in like that mid 2010 sound. That's where I feel like the production really is at. Because that was the last Dr. Dre album that we got, was Compton. And this record sounds like an extension of that. And to be honest with you, that's not good. Because Compton was not that good of an album. Might have been a little bit better than Missionary. Maybe just a tad bit better. But overall, if you put Compton up against The Chronic in 2001, Compton is going to pale in comparison to those records. That Compton was weak. Compton was weak compared to those records. That was the weakest. The best song on the Compton album was "Talking to My Diary," which was the last song. I think they played that song at the end of the Straight Outta Compton movie, because Compton came out around the time during all the hype of the Straight Outta Compton film. But "Talking to My Diary" was the best song on that record, and it was the last song on the album. But that was the record that should have been the standard of that Compton album. And if it had been, then Missionary would have been a lot better. Like the way Talking to My Diary sounded, that sounds like Dr. Dre. Talking to My Diary is the only song on the Compton album that sounds like Dr. Dre. That's why I'm saying that song should have been the standard of what Compton sounded like. That type of sound that we hear on Talking to My Diary, that's what I was expecting to hear on Missionary. Because talking to My Diary is a great song. That's a great song. But the way that song sounded, that's Dr. Dre in my opinion. Everything else on that record was hit or miss, because a lot of that did not sound like Dre. But that song sounded like Dre. And I understand that he has a different production team now. He don't have the same people around him like he did probably 10 years ago. But I know Mailman and all those guys aren't around him anymore. I know these are different people. I know looking at the credits on Wikipedia, I could see that there was different people with him. Like, what's my guy's name? I think his name is Mark Batson or something like that. I didn't even see his name on anything. And him and Dre did a lot of, they put out a lot of heat back in the 2000s when I was in high school, but I didn't see his name anywhere. And there was another gentleman that Dre used to work with around the late 2000s when he was still putting out some really great songs and producing for a lot of heat. I forget that guy's name. I think his last name is Elizondo, I believe. I can't think of his first name, but him and Dre were doing a lot of songs during the late 2000s when I was in high school, and they was producing a lot of heat, because I think they were the ones that did the Out of Control remix for 50 Cent that featured Mobb Deep. They was putting out some heat, but I didn't even see that gentleman's name with Dre on the production credits. And man, he should have stuck with them guys if he could have. He should have kept them as long as he did, because he was putting out some heat back then. But like I said, man, I just wasn't feeling this record, man. Like not Talking to My Diary, but Thank You was to me, that's the best song overall on this album that was worth really listening to over and over again. Everything else on here was just mid. in my opinion. And I hate to say that. I don't want to say these things. I don't want to say these things about a Snoop and Dr. Dre album. Snoop is my favorite rapper of all time. Dr. Dre is one of my favorite producers, and I don't want to say these things. I wanted to like this album more than I did. I listened to this album repeatedly, trying to figure out, is there something that I'm missing? I wanted to. Maybe, who knows, maybe I'll step away from the album and go back and listen to it and it'll grow on me. But even if I grow to like the album more than I'm liking it now, I still will not say that this is a classic record. I'm still not gonna say that this is a classic. It's an alright record, but to me, it's a bit mid, in my opinion. But it's interesting though, because Snoop Dogg recently this year, Snoop Dogg he's put out 2 projects that I think were really good. These were projects that they weren't his projects, but he oversaw these projects being created. The first one being the Dog Pound album, the new Dog Pound album, We All We Got, which came out earlier this year. I think this came out in April of 2024. This was a really good record, and Snoop oversaw this project. He picked the beats. He oversaw everything. He structured the album. I believe he did a lot. I mean, he really was hands-on and executive produced this album, and it came out really good. I think this is one of the best Dog Pound albums that's come out in a while, because after they did that album back in 2009, a lot of Dog Pound's albums were, for me, they were hit or miss. Like they weren't all that good. But this is probably the best Dog Pound album that I've heard in probably like 15 years. Honestly, the last really good one I heard was Then This Is Now, back in 2009. This one is right up there as far as like really good records. And Snoop oversaw this. He oversaw this. He sought out the producers and everything, and it was a real good record. A very mature, modern G-Funk West Coast hip hop album. That's what I was hoping that Missionary was gonna be. This album was what I was hoping that Missionary was gonna be, and it didn't come out that way. Another project that Snoop put out this year, or he oversaw, was the Eastsiders EP, Still Easty. Only 7 songs, but I can tell you, all those 7 songs are better than anything that was on Missionary. And Snoop oversaw that project coming together. But it was better than anything that was on Missionary. So it's kind of making me wonder, did Snoop really need to do a whole album with Dr. Dre at this point in his career? Because it looks like to me he's doing a phenomenal job being a producer himself, at least overseeing projects and putting out some great bodies of work. I mean, back in 2022, the Mount Westmore album came out. The Mount Westmore album with him, with Snoop, 40, Too Short, and Ice Cube. That album was banging. I don't care what nobody say. Everybody want to talk about like these old rappers need to start rapping. Nah, that album was banging. I mean, Snoop, everybody on that album, all 4 of them were executive producers, but that goes to show you just how smart and how they know their business and how they know their music, because that album was banging. I mean, I think some of Snoop's solo albums like a few years ago are better than Missionary. I think I Want to Thank Me is a better album than Missionary. I think the Never Left album is better. I think the Kool-Aid album is better. Missionary might only be better than the BODR album, the Back on Death Row album, and the Algorithm. It might be better. Missionary might be better than those records. But I will listen to Never Left, I Want to Thank Me, and Kool-Aid over Missionary. I do. I listen to those albums quite a bit. There was another album he put out. Was it From the Streets to the Suites? That was really banging too. That was a real banging album. Dre wasn't even a part of that, and that album got positive reviews from a lot of people, from a lot of reviewers. Dre wasn't a part of that album. I mean, we can even go further back, man. The 7 Days of Funk album that Snoop did with Dame Funk back in 2013. So that's 11 years ago now. That album is what really brought Snoop back, because the prior albums he had put out were very hit or miss, man. And That album really brought him back because Dame Funk gave him that modern funk. And Snoop is great when he raps over funk. Cause he's really like our generation's funk, like funk guy. Like he's to our generation what like George Clinton and Bootsy and stuff were to our like parents and grandparents and so forth. That was a phenomenal. That was a really great record. The 7 Days of Funk. I would like to hear Snoop do another full length album with Dame Funk. I would like to hear Snoop do an album with DJ Premier. I think Snoop would do, man. If Snoop did a whole album with DJ Premier, that would be killer. Dame Battle Cat. I would like to hear a whole album with Battle Cat. I would say Rick Rock, but Never Left actually was almost a full album with Rick Rock because Rick Rock produced a lot of those songs. But Rick Rock is always giving Snoop Dogg some heat. He's always giving Snoop some heat. There's so many different producers. Fred Wreck is another great producer that Snoop Dogg has worked with for years. I mean, man, Superfly, like Warren G. Like, as a matter of fact, where was all these guys? When Missionary was being done? Like Snoop really has his own circle of producers that really give him great music. Music far better than what we hear on Missionary, to be honest with you. Let's just be real. He does. So it's making me question, like, did we really need a Snoop and Dr. Dre album? Did we really need this at this point? I feel like maybe Missionary came out a bit too late. Missionary should have came out back in the late 2000s when Dre was still dropping some heat. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. That's when that album should have came out. But I'm sorry, this album just did not live up to the hype. I'm not feeling it. Like, even if I went back and listened to this album and like it better than I do now, I'm still not gonna consider it to be a classic. I'm still gonna consider it to be a decent Snoop Dogg album at most. But man, this album did not live up to the expectations. And then the fact that one of the main songs on the album that I really dug is not even on the physical copy, that just take it even more down for me. But I know when I upload this video, I'm probably gonna get a lot of people in the comment section talking about, man, Snoop and Dre are 50 something years old, man. You can't expect them to rap about the same things they did when they were 20 years old, and man, you can't expect another dog. Listen. Let me say it again. I was not expecting another Doggystyle, and I wasn't expecting Snoop to be rapping like he was when he was 21. And let me tell you something else. All of you people out there that keep saying, "Oh, these guys are 50 years old and this and that," that doesn't have nothing to do with it. Let me tell you something. I was at work yesterday. You know what album I was listening to? I was listening to that Common and Pete Rock album, The Auditorium. That album was fire. Both Common and Pete Rock are in their 50s, and they put out a great body of work. So don't give me that nonsense about just because Snoop and Dre ain't young like they used to, they can't put out real good music. This is not an adult album. Alright, this is a pop rap album. So don't give me that mess about Snoop and Dre being in their 50s when Common and Pete Rock just put out a fire record. Nas is in his 50s, and he been putting out heat. The King's Disease albums and the Magic albums that he did with Hit Boy, those are some of Nas's best albums. Like, that was like Nas's third or fourth win. So don't sit there and tell me because these guys are in their 50s that's an excuse for them to put out mediocre work. No. When there's so many artists in their age group that are putting out phenomenal rappers. I just mentioned the Mount Westmore album. Everybody in that group is in their 50s. Too Short and E40 are pushing 60. And that record was fire. E40 has got like well over 30 some albums, and he still puts out heat. Man, the new Ice Cube album, I listened to the new Ice Cube album the other day at work, and that record was better than Missionary. And Ice Cube has got to be 55 years old now. And he put out a really good album. That's the best Ice Cube album that's come out in years. Because I haven't really listened. The last Ice Cube album I really listened to was Laugh Now, Cry Later from 2006. The albums that came out in between there weren't that great. but that one was really good. And Cube is 55 years old. So stop making these excuses. Listen, the album is mid. I'm sorry, the album is mid. That's cool that you like it. That's cool that you enjoy it. But the album is mid. It didn't live up to the hype. Snoop and Dre have done far better work than the Missionary album. They've done far better. I mean, I was listening to the Blue Carpet Treatment the other day, and I think Dre produced, what, 2 songs on that album? Maybe 3, but the 2 that I know he produced was Boss's Life and Imagine That featuring D'Angelo. Classics. Boss's Life is a classic Snoop Dogg song. That was in 2006. Imagine That with D'Angelo was a great song. Only 2 songs that Dre produced on that album, and they were great. They stood out. Go and listen to Boss's Life, and dang, I just had the song in my head. Imagine That featuring D'Angelo. Listen to those songs. Matter of fact, go and listen. If you never listened to Talking to My Diary from the Compton album, go listen to that song. That's Dr. Dre right there. That's Dr. Dre. Talking to My Diary, Imagine That, and Boss's Life. That's Dr. Dre. It's not really like the G-Funk sound from Death Row, but still, Dr. Dre has always had like a signature sound where you could tell, even if it's different, you could always tell that it was Dre behind it. And that's why I like Thank You so much. That's why I like the song Thank You so much, because the song Thank You is the only one that I heard on Missionary that actually gave me Dr. Dre vibes. Nothing else on there really gave me Dr. Dre. Like, oh, this is Dre. Nah, Thank You was the only song on this album that really gave me that vibe. And it's not even on the physical copy. But, you know, I could sit here all day trying to argue my point. But some of y'all are probably going to comment anyway, saying this and that. But I'm standing by what I'm saying. Missionary's mid. Missionary's a mid album. Considering the Dog Pound album that came out this year and the Still East EP by the Eastsiders, Missionary is mid. And Snoop has put out other projects in recent years that have been far better than this album. So I'm sticking to my point. I'm sticking to my guns. Missionary is mid. Alright. If you like it, that's fine. But me, I didn't like it because I thought that it could have been far better. And that's how I'm gonna leave it. So, you know, that's it for this album review. You know, like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Missionary. You know what I'm saying? If you like it, hey, cool. If you don't, hey, I'm there with you. But I just thought this album was mid. But you ain't got to take my word for it. If you're watching this video, go and listen to the album yourself. Matter of fact, don't even listen to my video until you listen to the album yourself a few times. Just don't take my word for it, because music is subjective. This is just my opinion. But for me, this album just didn't live up to the hype. So that's it for this album review. This album review talking about Snoop and Dre's Missionary album. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Hope you all enjoyed my take on this particular album. If you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to tap that bell when you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified when I drop new content. And as usual, man, I want to thank everybody that's been subscribing to the channel, everybody that's been watching the videos, everybody that's, you know, just been supporting all around, man. I really appreciate it. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week. And if I don't put out another video before New Year's, hope everybody has a blessed New Year's as well. Peace out, y'all.